Israel struck an Iranian nuclear facility. More than 680 U.S. and Israeli troops have reportedly been killed or wounded. Qatar's state news agency reported that Qatari authorities have arrested 10 people accused of working for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. The suspects allegedly face charges related to espionage and sabotage. Qatar also said it was targeted by 2 ballistic missiles launched from Iran. One missile was intercepted while the other hit Al Udeid Air Base, which hosts U.S. forces. The Ministry of Defense issued its statement after a series of explosions were heard near Doha hours earlier, stressing that Qatar's armed forces are fully capable of protecting national sovereignty and confronting any threat with firmness. Meanwhile, according to Qatari outlet Al Jazeera, the Israeli military announced it had attacked an underground nuclear site in Iran known as Minjade, alleging that scientists there were secretly developing a critical component for a nuclear weapon. Israel claimed its military intelligence had continued tracking the scientists' activities and identified their new location at the site, enabling what it described as a precise strike on the concealed underground complex. Israel said the scientists had been operating at that location since Israel and the United States struck several Iranian nuclear facilities during the previous conflict in June 2025. Since the conflict began, Iran's IRGC-affiliated media claimed that total U.S. and Israeli casualties have now exceeded 680 killed and wounded by the 4th day of fighting. The report said this figure was based on intelligence sources and real-time surveillance data from the field. The wider Middle East crisis is now sending shockwaves through the global economy, with analysts warning it could become the most direct and severe disruption since the COVID-19 era. Unlike earlier crises that primarily affected market sentiment, Iranian retaliation is described as striking at strategic economic nodes and energy infrastructure across the Gulf, triggering a chain reaction that extends from shipping and aviation to finance and industrial production. The epicenter of the economic risk is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow maritime choke point that carries roughly a quarter of the world's oil supply. Any sustained disruption there can cause cascading shocks across energy markets and global trade. After Iran signaled the potential closure of the strait and attacks were reported near commercial shipping routes, major maritime carriers began rapidly adjusting operations. Global shipping giants including Maersk, MSC, Hapag-Lloyd, and CMA CGM announced suspensions or rerouting measures to reduce risk exposure. The Strait of Hormuz is widely considered the most critical corridor for global oil trade, handling around a third of crude oil exports shipped by sea, along with significant volumes of liquefied natural gas, LNG. Roughly 75% of these flows head to Asian markets such as China, India, Japan, and South Korea. The crisis is also disrupting aviation. For years, the Middle East has functioned as a vital air crossroads connecting Europe and Asia, especially as airspace restrictions over Russia and Ukraine forced airlines to rely more heavily on southern routes. A wider regional conflict now threatens the most serious interruption to global gas markets since the Russia-Ukraine war reshaped energy supply routes years ago. Qatar, Iran's neighbor, sits among the world's most important LNG exporters. Qatar Energy reportedly confirmed a temporary production halt at the Ras Laffan industrial complex, a site responsible for roughly a third of global LNG output, an alarming signal for energy traders and governments. Financial markets have reacted sharply. Airline stocks dropped while energy and defense stocks surged. U.S. markets reportedly saw a volatile session as the conflict expanded and global energy prices jumped. Rising oil and gas prices do not stay confined to energy markets. They quickly spread across the economy by increasing production and transportation costs, pushing up consumer prices and intensifying inflation pressure. This risk is especially severe for developing economies with limited monetary and fiscal flexibility, where absorbing external shocks becomes far more difficult. As geopolitical uncertainty rises, investor behavior typically turns defensive. Capital tends to shift toward perceived safe haven assets, such as gold or major government bonds, while emerging market currencies and stock markets face stronger selling pressure. If tensions spiral into a broader regional war, analysts warn the world could be staring at a new oil shock, one capable of triggering recessionary conditions, as history has shown in past energy crises. Separately, new images of President Donald Trump drew major attention during a White House Medal of Honor ceremony where he commented on the ongoing strikes against Iran. Beyond suggesting he would not rule out sending U.S. ground forces, observers noted visible red, scaly patches spreading from below his collar up toward his ear and hairline, as well as bruising on his hand, partially covered with concealer. Trump's physician reportedly said the redness was caused by a topical cream used as a preventative skin treatment, adding that Trump had been using it for about a week and that the redness could last several more weeks. The statement did not specify the exact medication or why the treatment was necessary. Questions about Trump's health have surfaced repeatedly in recent months, especially after bruising on his hands was previously explained by the White House as the result of constant handshaking and an intense schedule. Reports also referenced earlier disclosures that Trump was being treated for chronic venous insufficiency, with doctors suggesting frequent handshaking and aspirin use could contribute to mild soft tissue bruising. Tensions are now approaching a critical 24-hour window. A senior official told CNN that the United States is preparing a major intensification of strikes against Iran within the next day, while Israel issued evacuation warnings for residents in a neighborhood of Tehran. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the most punishing attacks may still be ahead and emphasized that the administration believes its objectives can be achieved without deploying ground troops. He described the mission's core aim as destroying Iran's ballistic missile capability and preventing Tehran from rebuilding those systems or using them to sustain or advance its nuclear program. Rubio, the defense secretary, and other senior officials have reportedly begun closed briefings for congressional leaders and key lawmakers on national security committees. U.S. military leaders have also signaled that additional losses should be expected if the campaign expands, warning that completing the objectives will take time and could become a brutal mission. Shortly afterward, the U.S. State Department issued an urgent notice advising Americans to leave much of the Middle East immediately, urging citizens to depart 15 countries and territories through commercial means where possible, including hotspots such as Iran, Israel, Lebanon, and Syria, as well as allied states such as Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. On the battlefield, Iran claimed it had launched ballistic missiles capable of penetrating layered air defenses and raining firestorms on Israel. The IRGC also alleged it struck the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln with 4 ballistic missiles in the Arabian Sea, a claim amplified by viral videos circulating online. Separately, Israel's military said it is investigating a failure to intercept an Iranian ballistic missile that struck the city of Beersheba, killing at least 10 people and injuring around 30. The IDF said its warning system functioned correctly but admitted the failure to intercept the missile is under review. In another escalation, reports emerged surrounding the downing of a U.S. F-15. Iran's state media claimed it shot down the jet over Kuwait, while at least one report cited a U.S. Central Command source confirming that at least one U.S. fighter aircraft was downed in Kuwait and that the pilots ejected safely. Some unconfirmed accounts suggested the incident could have involved friendly fire. Smoke was also reported rising from the U.S. Embassy compound in Kuwait amid renewed air raid sirens, prompting the embassy to urge U.S. citizens to shelter in place, stay on the lowest possible floor, avoid windows, and refrain from traveling to embassy facilities while missile and drone threats remain active. The conflict is also widening on Israel's northern front. Israel's military reported aerial objects launched from Lebanon, triggering sirens in multiple areas in northern Israel. The first such launches from Lebanon since the U.S. Israel campaign against Iran began. Hezbollah has not formally claimed responsibility, but Israeli officials said details are under investigation. If confirmed, it would mark Hezbollah's first direct participation in attacks on Israel alongside Iran since the June 2025 Israel-Iran conflict. Israel responded with strikes across Lebanon, saying it would not allow Hezbollah to threaten Israel or harm northern residents. The Associated Press reported powerful explosions that shook buildings and shattered windows, along with low-flying fighter jets during Israel's retaliatory wave. Hezbollah, for its part, argued that Israel's continued strikes and assassinations justify its right to respond at a time and place of its choosing, while calling for pro-Iran rallies and memorial events within its sphere of influence in Lebanon. Israel has also issued evacuation advisories for civilians in dozens of villages in southern Lebanon, warning of imminent strikes against Hezbollah-related positions. Finally, Israel launched yet another airstrike wave into the heart of Tehran, according to Times of Israel, while Iranian outlets reported explosions in multiple districts. President Trump suggested the conflict could last up to 4 weeks, arguing that Iran's large geographic size makes a rapid campaign unlikely. In response to Iran's missile attacks, some of which reportedly hit countries not directly involved in the initial operation, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom issued a joint statement expressing alarm and signaling readiness to defend their interests and allies in the Gulf through defensive action if necessary.